You're good.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you.
It's on two.
You put on one?
One.
Inches away.
Talking about I don't listen.
Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something.
Oh, I know. I don't want the mood to go off today.
You'll be walking.
So we'll be walking.
Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault.
I'm going to be at
Next
El
time,
Torito
ignore
over
your
there,
inner
or
voice.
whatever that's
Don't
called.
text
Yeah,
it.
All
Felix.
day, all night.
Stay up on what's happening here at Power. We've got new shows, new guests, and new events that help us connect with the community. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Power 108.9. You can also go to power1089.com to get all of the updated news and happenings here at Power. Thanks for listening.
Peace and blessings, family. This is the Vanguard on Power 108.9, broadcasting live from the Battery here in the beautiful city of Atlanta, albeit overcast. But It's
Yes.
all good. I'm here with my co-host, Kathy Robinson, and
What's up?
and Brother Kwame. Glad to have you, brother and sister. And we do expect Brother Akinyele and Mojo, the professor of Georgia State University, to come here shortly. So he's running a little late, but we hope to have him very, very soon. So how was y'all weekend so far?
It's been good so far. Got that extra day off on Monday.
Oh, I know that's right. How about you, Kwame?
I'm working an extra day on Monday.
Oh, you were? Oh, okay. All right. Some of us just got to do what we got to do. Time and a half.
There you
That's
go.
right. That's right.
Get that money.
Well, this segment is a quick segment for me for blackfacts.com. On this day in history, in Louisiana, the first Black National Guard was formed in 1885. So that's something that I don't know if you knew.
Had no clue.
No clue, being from Louisiana. Same here. But again, we want to definitely recognize that, and it's brought to you by From Old Guard to Vanguard photo exhibit by Kamal Cyrus, and you can check his Facebook page out. Just go to From Old Guard to Vanguard photo exhibit, and check him out, and he'll give you all the information you need to bring that exhibit to where you at.
All right.
So you got any things going on? Any questions?
No, I'm just ready to shop.
You just
Monday.
ready to shop?
How-
Monday. Okay.
Monday has specials.
Memorial Day specials. Huh?
There you go.
Yeah. Now, in terms of your company, what do you have going on for ASP?
Right now, we are concentrating on a new ASP, Atlanta Segment Publications, which is our comic book arm.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And we have hired 2 artists to work on the covers specifically, but they'll also be helping out with the interiors of the comic book. So we have at least 6 projects that the 2 of them are working on at present.
Man, outstanding.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting times. And I know at some point you definitely want to have a film festival at
Yes,
some point, as
most
well as
def-
do your movies.
Yes, that organization that I started for Georgia, the Film Association, Gecko FIP,
Yes.
the Georgia Collaborating Film People, we're hoping to do some kind of mini convention next month, and I have some marketing people that want to work on that. So,
Oh, man, that's
yeah.
fantastic, brother. Well, just a little bit about the guest that we'll be getting coming by shortly. He's chair of African American Studies at Georgia State University. And I know he's very excited because Georgia State just beat the University of Tennessee Volunteers.
Yes.
And I know it's a big shock to a lot of people, but he's always been a good supporter, a great supporter of the athletic department and programs, and anything involving the students. Professor Akinyele has always been front and center.
Oh.
And I know as soon as I heard the score of the game, I said, man, I thought about Muhammad Ali. It was, who is it, Howard Cosell, who told everybody, when he was fighting George Foreman, he said, Ali doesn't have a chance. He doesn't have a prayer. And then Ali's told the world, I heard that chump say that. So if my prayers reach the right source, not only will George Foreman fall, but mountains will fall.
Okay.
So there was some Tennessee mountains falling yesterday. What's our cousin that used to play for Tennessee? Got to show much love and respect.
Lucas.
Lucas Taylor, wide receiver out of University of Tennessee. So Hey, brother, they gonna get back on track. That's for sure. Yeah. So, did you have any questions this morning in terms of just
Yes,
the history questions?
I was going to say for Black history questions I have. One of them I wanted to end up asking was, how did you get interested in Black history?
Wow. Well, when I was coming up in school, the only thing black growing up in terms of reading about was a dog named Spot, and maybe something on the first black person, person to be killed in the Revolutionary War was Crispus Attucks. And thing is, so I just pretty much saw that we were really lacking in terms of black history and recognition of what we've done and who, where we came from and what we've contributed to this country. So I really had a thirst to know more, and the more I learned away from school, because I had to, I couldn't get that black history within school, obviously, and thing is, our heroes were always, Patrick Henry and well, in terms of just reading about these people,
Right.
And even though we wanted to be integrated into the American fabric, and that's great, it's just that I needed to see reflections of myself.
Yeah, because I was going to say the only thing I remembered about Black history coming up was actually Roots on TV.
Right.
They played it every time.
Yeah. And that actually really captivated Black America. I mean, all over the nation and pretty much probably the world. Everyone got to see the journey of a Black family. And thing is, man, I remember speaking with Kwame a while ago about how with the advent of this DNA, had Alex Haley had this technology back in, when he was doing it. 'Cause it took him, 12 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to discover Kuta Kinte in the Gambia.
Yep.
So I think it's very important to understand Black history, learn Black history, and realize that, you can't just go by the curriculum of whatever school you're going into. You have to go outside of that. I went to J.A. Rogers, Race and Sex, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's a book that was produced in the late 1800s. I read pretty much every book that Malcolm X read while he was in prison. Findings in Genetics by Gregor Mendel, which determined that Black people had to be the first on the planet because genetically we produce all other races, but none other races could produce us.
So question was, how did you find out about all the books?
Well, once I learned about Malcolm, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley, who obviously did Roots, that's what led me to other books.
So the reference within those books.
The reference within those books. And then I had a thirst to learn some other stories. I went to James Baldwin, Fire Next Time. I know you.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah. And being from New York.
What makes that your favorite book?
First of all, James Baldwin and I went to the same school. So, when we the first couple of years, we would have pep rallies all the time. And the teachers and the principal would always say, you need to emulate these people that went before you.
Right.
So we had all these benchmarks that we had to meet, Right. And I had never heard of James Baldwin the way that they talked about him at the school. And these are teachers that knew him.
Wow,
so,
incredible. Yeah. And I remember go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the Oxford debate that James Baldwin had back in, I think it was the year Malcolm X was assassinated, but I think he went out there in the summertime. And you can if you look up James Baldwin Oxford debate, he gave one of the most precise, most intelligent deliveries of the speech and the plight of Black Americans that I've ever heard. Similar to Malcolm X, who did it a year before his assassination, but he was just so eloquent.
Yes, and there's a copy of it on Facebook, believe it or not. So
and also you can go to YouTube as well. But when I read The Fire Next Time, and it was his analysis through the eyes, I guess he was observing the Nation of Islam, Malcolm, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and then he was correlating with the Civil Rights Movement. So that book was a great impact upon me.
I think his father was a preacher, or he had preachers in his family. So that term "Fire Next Time" was basically from some series of sermons that he had heard.
Yeah.
And one of the discussions we had earlier, we were talking about the Deacons for Defense. Can you tell me a little bit about the Deacons for Defense?
Yes. Well, for those of you who know about the Black Panther Party that formed in Oakland February 15th, 1966, they got their idea in terms of, they were initially called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. The Black Panther Party, I guess, Black Panther Party theme or what have you actually came from the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, which had an image of a Black Panther. And so the thing is, so they saw those flyers from Lowndes County, and they say, okay, they have a Black Panther political party in Alabama, Lowndes County, because of course in Lowndes County, they had the Republican Party, which I guess that was the elephant, right?
Right.
And instead of the donkey, the Southern, they had the Dixiecrats, had a little scrawny, nasty-looking rooster with a heading of white supremacy going across his chest. And so black people, they're like, oh, that's not the party for us. so they say, we should got to form our own party. So they eventually decided to take some of those ideas. And thing is, from there, they wanted to make a position on self-defense. And so the Deacons for Defense was a group out of Louisiana originally that were former war veterans that came home.
Factory workers.
That believed that, they were going to protect their community, use the skills they learned in the service and even before then, because many of them were hunters, fishers, hunters, what have you. And so the party decided to say, okay, we're going to be the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And so that's why the Deacons for Defense were so pivotal. And not one incident of violence or any threat of violence was ever there when the Deacons were on the scene. Because they not only talk the talk, they walk the walk. And there's an old hunter's ode that says, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun.
And did you know there's actually a Deacons for Defense movie?
Yes,
yes.
Forrest Whitaker.
Right.
Gotcha.
Ah.
Hey, I'm ahead of you, brother.
Yes, that you got to watch that movie.
Well, we're going to definitely take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the Vanguard on Power 108.9.
All right.
Okay, that's I got to remember to do that, right? And that was actually going back to you with your question, right?
Yep, because
Okay.
it's coming up with some more questions.
That's right. Yeah, it's all right.
So I was going to say, there was another one that you talked about recently that was real good too. I can't remember right now. Because I know the Deacon one was interesting. I didn't know about that a lot of them were in the military.
Yeah, a lot of them came out of the military. And,
Yeah.
and then, of course, they grew up around that stuff. Geronimo Pratt, one of the, we were talking about that on the show too. Geronimo Pratt, one of the longest held political prisoners.
Yes.
We were actually there when he was released
Yes.
at the courthouse, along with Kathleen Cleaver, Eldridge Cleaver, Emory Douglas.
You remember the rally at Lamert Park?
Yeah. I think Najee Ali was doing the.
Yeah, he was just coming up at the time.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
He was just a kid, basically.
Right. Well, yeah. He's definitely a star now.
Yes.
Yeah, but we can definitely jump on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Marcus
Oh.
Garvey.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey.
I got a little piece of information for you.
Oh.
Why did the Black Panthers of Oakland know about Alabama?
But I know they used to, Bobby and Huey used to, I think they sent off some flyers, or sent for some flyers from.
It's even more basic than that.
Okay.
The black people of California basically came from two areas in the South.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So most of the Los Angeles and Southern California blacks came from Tennessee and Louisiana.
Yep.
Okay,
While the Central and the Bay Area ones came from Mississippi and Alabama.
Let's put that on tape, though.
Yeah.
Love talking about it in the media.
Ah.
But yeah, we're going to put it back on tape. And
More
I'm gonna go back to you than you.
All right, that'll work.
Yeah. Brother, you be dropping dimes on the commercials.
Okay.
Quarters.
Quarters.
Dollars, man, dollars.
Oh, yeah. And I do remember that Deacons for Defense movie, too. That was amazing.
Yes.
Really. Welcome back with the Vanguard on Power 108.9. See Michael messing over the mayor messing with Brother Kwame over here. But Kwame, you was making a point about earlier during the break. You want to bring up?
Yes. We were talking about the how did the Panthers know about what was going on politically in Alabama.
And it was always my impression, before you give your answer,
Mm-hmm.
that they sent off for some flyers, and they received these flyers with the little panther emblem on there for Lowndes County.
Yes.
But you were saying about...
Well, like I said, it's more basic than that. The people of Southern California, the blacks of Southern California, actually come from mostly Louisiana and Texas.
I see that.
So in LA, we to this day we still have the La La Festival,
Yeah,
which I
I
used
remember
to
that when I was
attend
out there. Right,
every year.
yeah.
But in the Bay Area in Central California, those people are from Mississippi and Alabama mostly. And some of those people in Mississippi, or that are from Mississippi, they were sent back for summers to go visit their kinfolk in
Down
those
south, right.
interesting in those same states where they came from.
Man, that's amazing, right there.
Well-
Now, I didn't know that fact.
Yeah.
And part of it was through my actual DNA testing, our people actually left Louisiana, and the first place was California.
Wow.
So it shows you the line as well.
Well, see, actually, my line in terms of genetics went up to Chicago. It was at first it was early Virginia, then it went to through Alabama, Mississippi, then down to Louisiana,
Yes.
and then I'm all over in Louisiana, New Orleans to even Lafayette, believe it or not, and then all the way up to Chicago. And I'm proud of that fact because a little known fact is that a black man discovered Chicago.
I remember that.
His name was Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable.
Yeah.
He was of Haitian ancestry. So that's another part of that black history.
Yep.
And I know, we all can speak to that, and certainly Professor Akinyele Mojo.
Yes.
And that's why it's important to know, where you came from and some of the accomplishments of our people here as
Yes.
well.
Because they have a bus they actually did a tribute to and put a statue out there for him.
Yeah,
as
a
well.
Pioneer Court.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pioneer Court
Downtown,
downtown,
yeah.
right. And I made sure I paid homage to that. I took pictures there, and I was just so proud to stand next to a black man who discovered what is considered the second city.
Yes.
The city with big shoulders, because they say they bolder.
Yeah.
So again, it's just part of that thirst for black history and how important it is to our view of ourselves.
Yeah. And if we don't talk about it, it won't come to light.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah.
So that is good.
And you had other question about black history, was it? Or?
Yes, well, one of them I wanted to talk about was basically through school. What did you learn about your history through school?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's just I didn't learn much with the regular school books. Crispus Attucks. Of course, they talked about Dr. King, but no mention of Malcolm or Elijah or even Paul Robeson, who I look up upon as a big hero.
And Marcus Garvey?
Oh, Marcus Garvey, and I know Kwame could definitely speak to the impact.
Yes.
I mean,
Come on, Kwame, tell me a little bit about.
Don't get me started.
Get started.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Teach.
One of the things that helped me is that my parents hadn't finished school in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So when they came here, they were hungry for education and knowledge.
Wow.
So all those books that they were getting in school, high school, because they went and got a GED and so forth, but the college courses, all those books were turned over to me since I was the oldest. So
And so what
I
some of those?
devoured
What were some of those books?
everything from novels to literature, you name it, geography. Geography was some of the first ones I got my hands on. Medical, psychology. I was literally getting college courses at home.
And people got to remember how big the UNIA,
Yes.
Universal Negro Improvement Association, founded by Marcus Garvey, how
Yes.
big of an organization that was.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about well over 1.5 million members.
Yes. By the time he died in 1940, there was at least 700 chapters around the world.
Oh, man.
And some of those people, some of those chapters still exist to this day,
Yes.
albeit the members' grandchildren and then great-grandchildren. They're still continuing the legacy.
Well,
And I was going to say, weren't they, or did they not host taking people to Africa?
what had kind of with the steamship line, the
Yes.
Black Star
Black
steamship
Star
line,
liner.
and it's
You know
very
why it was called a Black Star?
Why?
Because there was a White Star liner.
Talk to us about it, brother.
Exactly. The Titanic and some of those companies, big companies, Connard and so forth, they actually had a White Star liner. So
okay, all
Garvey
right.
came with the Black Star liner.
See, now that's part of the white history I didn't get.
Yes.
Yeah, and the interesting part is that I've been to, Ghana,
Yes.
and there's a flag for Ghana, and it has a black star in it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a testament to Marcus Garvey from Osagyefo, Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, and he put it in the flag as a drawing light to bring Africans in the diaspora back home. So that's very interesting that you bring up that, because it's so important to realize that we have an interconnectivity that we definitely need to recognize.
And I know you know what the colors mean within.
Oh yeah, well, it's Pan-African colors. The thing is, it's the red, yellow, and green. And those are the traditional. If you look at African flags, the Pan-Africanist countries usually have those color schemes.
Red is for the blood.
Right, red is for the blood. Go with me, brother.
Yeah, red is for all the bloodshed.
Okay.
Green is for the land, and the yellow or the gold is for the sunshine.
And Marcus Garvey's traditional flag was red, black, and green. And you give me that.
Yes.
We all know. We should know that. But
Oh
yeah.
yes, but some people have changed the lineup of colors. But he had a specific way that he put it. But the black was for the skin color, because he wanted people. Everybody had called themselves. We were called by all kinds of names here in America.
Right, that's true.
You know what I'm saying? But he said he was one of the first people that says, "Well, we are black."
Wow.
So that's why that black was in the flag, and of course the red, was for the blood, also here in America, and the green was for the land. That's why we say "free the land."
Free the land.
Correct.
And that's a greeting Kwame always. When I give him a call, he say, "Free the land, brother."
That's right.
so yeah, and also part of that too with the Marcus Garvey reference rather, is that with him, he was the first one that had the Back to Africa movement.
Right.
And thing is, we had kind of come up in a society where, we wanted to be a part of this fabric. And
Yes.
and again, Marcus Garvey was saying, well, if we're catching such a tough time here, for those of us who want to go back, we're going to create this black steamship
Yes.
line to take you back. And what happened to the black steamship line in New York, the New York Harbor?
Yes. What happened was a lot happened, but basically he was creating not just a physical transport, but also a mental and spiritual transport, where we could start thinking of the motherland as our origin. Because you have to understand something. When he started the organization, the UNIA and so forth, there had been a massive influx of whites into America.
Right.
And so
Coming from Europe.
yeah,
and
after the war.
After the
yeah.
war, right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, and also I know that there's a fact that there's no Negro land I ever saw on the maps, on world maps, no colored land. And so the thing is, we needed to kind of re-identify ourselves in a sense. And black was just a universal term of pride. A lot of us say, well, okay, we're African or what have you, African American, and that's cool. But the thing is, still it comes from Africanus, which was a European explorer and colonizer who, that's where the term Africa came from. And Americus Vespucci was an Italian that America... Supposedly, right. That derives the
His
name
real name was Marco.
Marco, right.
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about that a lot. He just jumped on the bandwagon.
He just jumped on the bandwagon. So, but I think it's always important to just recognize who you are, define your own term of reference as best you can, and that's really how you become a complete human being as part of the human fabric. Because really, we're all interrelated. Those of us who are human beings, we all come from the same place, which is Africa. I don't care if you blonde, blue eye, and freckles. The root of humanity began in Africa. That's been proven by certainly older black scholars way back in the day, and even modern white scholars. Like what's the guy that did the National Geographics? Spencer Wells, Dr. Spencer Wells.
He has a program.
He has a program that kind of brought that out. But many of us who would kind of learn, we definitely had known that beforehand. So that's pretty much what it is in terms of that the way we look at ourselves.
And so another question was, who are some of your current mentors that you actually look up to?
I'm gonna go to Kwame on this one.
All right.
I think
So many.
I think Louis Gates is probably number one right now with me, because he is concentrating so much on genealogy and history, which is so important for us.
Very important.
To this day.
Right.
You know, like you said, those of us who are learned,
Right.
and I put that in quotes, we need to learn more. Even in the Bible, it actually says grow in grace and knowledge.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
And then it also says, my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
So you see what I'm saying? So we need to be growing. That's the only way we're going to grow, by reading, you know? So
Learning about self.
Exactly. And it's not just the people that we're following, because some, different people will bring different things to the forefront. But Gates, I like Gates because of all of the genealogy and the history.
And making it affordable for you to learn your history.
Well, in terms of myself, I know, and I told all of you guys this before, that Kwame Ture, who is commonly known to the world as Stokely Carmichael, I met him in Africa because, again, I was getting that knowledge of about Africa, so I say, well, I might as well travel to Africa.
Yeah.
It just happened I met Stokely Carmichael, who I refer to as Stokely just because of historical reference. Met him
slave name.
Right, right. But to the listeners, who may not know him as Kwame Ture, like we do. But the thing is, when I met him in Africa, he had such a impact on me in terms of just our dialogue, and then later when he would come to California to do speaking engagements or organizing for the All African People's Revolutionary Party, he would actually, I would actually reach out to him and then go meet him, or he was speaking at El Segundo College or something, and and I would go see him and we would talk, and he always used to tell me, once you acquire the commitment to your people, brother, don't stop. Do something, at least spend one day a week serving and doing something on behalf of your people. And if you don't do that, you're a traitor.
Yeah. That's powerful.
So, and from then, I just say, you know what, I've been giving my marching orders. So,
there you go.
Yeah. So we're gonna definitely come on back and
got more questions.
Get some more questions from Kathy when we return, and we'll be back with the Vanguard on Power 108.9.
All right.
I'm learning. Yeah, she actually called him. Okay. Is he down there? Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I've got his number.
Okay, yeah. Can you give him a call real quick? See his status. Oh, that's right, right across from Sports Social.
800. Yeah. You want me to go? Yeah.
We'll probably do a long break. He might not remember what I look like.
Yeah.
He might not remember what I look like.
Yeah, that's
So
Say Kwame.
Kwame's coming down too. Yeah. Let him know Kwame's That's some good dialogue.
Yep.
We got this. I'm be jelly at that show next week.
Oh, look at you.
Hey, Michael, you got your tickets for the Falcons? Because I know. No, okay. All right.
Falcon fan.
Yeah.
Saints all day.
Now, how did you hook up with Keon Carpenter? Y'all been best friends for a long time. Man.
Yeah, we did an event together.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. Keon Carpenter? I thought that was the guy that you introduced us to when we were at the show. Well, the thing is, we were coming out, and there was a really looked like a former athlete. Oh, okay. I don't know why I thought it was a young man that you introduced us to when we was headed out from the show, because he looked like an ex-football player. Oh man, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, brother. Yeah, I apologize, man. I think you guys were going over to the Braves game.
Right. It was a tall guy,
Yeah,
bald head.
No, that was the other guy right here.
No, but he had another. Oh,
No.
that's Well, maybe that's the one I thought.
Tall dude with the beard.
Yeah, like the goatee. Okay.
Right. Yeah, extra Laker. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's not the same one I remember.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Oh, well, I must be tripping. 'Cause
Of
I
age.
just remember you introduced us somewhere on the way out, and I said, "Oh, he must have been ex-pro athlete." He's pretty much in great shape. Oh, okay, that what him did. Okay, but y'all was getting ready to go to the Braves game. I just remember you and the guy, and was right by the elevator. And he shook our hands on the way out. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how's Malik doing? Doing good. Oh, okay, all right, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I thought Jeff got his test back.
He did.
Yeah.
He didn't even know. I said, James ended up going in and taking a picture and sending it to him. He goes, what's that? He said, man, that's your test results.
Oh, yeah. Well, I told him to take African ancestry as well so he could specifically identify the tribe. Yeah, that's what they do best to, pretty much pinpoint where exactly you come from in Africa. Yeah.
He had a match, a new match, and it was the
Yeah, he popped right up. I said, well, that's Jeff right there. I said, okay. And he did most of his ancestry came from the Congo region, and that would be
don't
Angola.
be telling on him. He want to say
Oh, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna stop. We're supposed to do a reveal on November 10th. Hey, everybody that's listening, I don't think y'all listening.
As they say, scratch that.
Scratch that. To my live feed, just forget what I say.
Okay, Malik was about to tell on him.
Yeah. Well, what would it mean to you, Mike? I mean, you think it would just be very interesting just to see exactly where you came from? Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Now, the ancestry DNA is not expensive. The African ancestry runs a little bit, but I think it's well worth it for both of them, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But at least with the ancestry one, you get in the ballpark
Yes.
to do it as well.
And I like the updates.
That's in the building. Oh, you got to get it now, bro?
The
Okay.
chair.
All right. All right.
Watch your back.
Okay.
I went up to Tennessee and shot the world, didn't y'all?
We were going to talk about that.
Yeah, they did.
How you doing, my brother?
Unfortunately, I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, it's all right.
I was doing another radio program and somebody sent me a message saying we're winning. Okay.
I said, we figured he was partying or something. Just celebrating.
Unfortunately not.
Oh, okay.
I was doing something with my family yesterday, so they didn't even know about it.
Oh.
We got to start paying attention.
Well, everybody
he
in the
was
world
all
know about it
excited.
now.
He was all excited for you.
Yeah, and
Oh,
here's the unfortunate thing. I looked on the news. I didn't see anything. See?
Oh,
He was on Sports Center, so I guess
I
that's
guess I
good.
didn't watch ESPN last night.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we got to go back.
Well, I was going to tell you something I told him earlier. I'm going to say that on the live feed about Muhammad Ali. Related to the victim.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's like when he beat George Foreman.
that's it.
That evening, let me say I was living in LA at the time. I guess I was in my 20s. And I went to, was it the Forum? I went somewhere and watched the live feed.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Somebody
Young,
found
that's
one?
not mine. Young brother, Mine's I was off. organizing
Mine's not.
it. He paid for my ticket. And he was a student at Locke High School.
All right.
And he bought my ticket. Give a phone.
Somebody's phone's ringing.
Oh, it might be my music. Not ringing.
I thought that was vibrant thing. Well, I was like, he busted Q-tip this morning.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to bring you in. Come back.
Special girl, real good girl. Biggest thing in my itty bitty world.
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen?
Up and she made me feel right.
This is Vanguard on Power 108.9. And finally joining us, Professor, Chairman, Warrior Scholar, Professor Akinyele Omowale Umoja. Welcome to the Vanguard.
Thanks for allowing me to be here and be with y'all this morning, Brother Malik.
Oh, yeah, appreciate that.
All
And we thought that possibly you were celebrating Georgia State beating the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. How did you react to that?
I wish I could say that that's what I was doing. I didn't know about it. I was doing another radio program yesterday, and somebody sent me a text telling me they were ahead, which surprised me. This is the first Southeastern Conference team, so it's important in terms of Georgia State's history. So one of my colleagues, some of the football players in his class, I told him he probably inspired them to go out there that day, because he's a former football player himself. Played at University of Alabama. Maurice Hobson, you probably might be familiar with him.
Yes, has a book, great book.
Yeah, so that's it. Maybe he inspired them. I don't think I know anybody on the team this year, on the football team this year. I hadn't taught any of those young brothers, but I'm proud of them.
Well, I see you on social media all the time. You got so many things going on, but I see you at some of the games, the basketball games, the football games. So you always...
I go to a lot of the basketball games. I taught a few of those players, even going back to Coach Drizel when he was at Georgia State. Oh, okay. They used to say I was the unofficial chaplain of his teams.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a lefty Drizel, right?
Lefty Drizel when
went
he was
to
there.
Maryland as well.
Yeah, and then, of course, Coach Hunter, who just left to the lane. I'm sorry to see him go when he and his son played there, and he actually kind of changed the culture of the basketball program when he was there. Got more enthusiasm, and he always had winning seasons. Coach Drizel, one of the things I liked about him was he'd be concerned about his players' lives other than basketball. So if they were having, that's why they called me the chaplain. If he was having some issues, he would have me talk to guys and be an unofficial mentor.
Wow. Oh, that's good.
Well, I know one of the things, I was, whenever there was an event with Bill Jennings, I'd always see you there along with Professor Charles E. Jones. Right. And you would always set the tone by pouring libation as well as speaking. Yeah. I know it's
Brother Bill had me. Billy X?
Yeah, Billy X. Jennings.
Billy X. Jennings, for anybody who doesn't know, he's like the archivist, really, of the Black Panther Party. He has the website.
It's About Time.
It's About Time, and he's the one who's been organizing the primary reunions of the Black Panther Party. So he's, in my mind, he's one of the people who maintains the legacy of that movement and for that organization. I kind of think of the Black Panther Party as a movement, in and of itself, which still exists. And I'm not talking about the necessarily the new Black Panther formations, but there's so many former Panthers who are still active in our movement and still inspire youth, today, no matter what the names of the organizations are.
Well, one thing that inspired me is your book that you've had out for a few years.
Thank you.
We Shoot Back.
We will shoot back.
We will shoot back.
It's funny because just recently in Mexico, they did a reading of my book during Black August. Okay. And they translated it, so it translates in Spanish. We will return the fire.
Oh, all right. I love it. Well, I had mentioned the old hunter's ode that a lot of hunters say. They say, well, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got together.
No, that's right. I heard that.
Yeah, and you have some questions for Professor?
Well, I wanted to know, who were some of your mentors growing up?
Wow.
Yeah,
man, you don't have enough time. You don't have enough time. But,
let's do the abbreviation.
One person notable I've been talking about a lot lately is Queen Mother Moore. Queen Mother Moore is known as the mother of the modern-day reparations movement. And when I was 18, I got involved. If there's a brother by the name of Muhammad Ahmed, or also known as Max Stanford, he founded a group called the Revolutionary Action Movement. RAM, and he worked with Malcolm X. He was incarcerated, and Queen Mother Moore started doing speaking engagements. And I didn't know who she was. I just graduated from high school, and I was asked to escort her as she spoke in Los Angeles to a group. There was a festival going on, really a bazaar. That was hosted by the people who, if you're from LA, you might remember, and you're my age, you remember the Herald Dispatch newspaper, which was one of the black publications. They hosted Queen Mother Moore, and they asked me to I was asked to be like the person that carried her bags, and
Yeah.
I couldn't say I was doing security because I didn't know what I was doing. But
You were assisting
I
her.
was her attaché. You know, so I traveled with her, and then from that I traveled with her throughout whenever she did a speaking engagement in Los Angeles. So I learned a lot from her. Learned about reparations. I learned about identifying with the African continent. She would say if cats had kittens in the oven, you wouldn't call them biscuits.
That's right.
So she would always say that we were African people. So I just learned a lot about her in terms of being bold. It even connects to my book because she told a story about when Marcus Garvey, who she was a part of his organization, he speaks in New Orleans in the 1920s, and police department don't want to allow Marcus Garvey to speak. And she said Marcus Garvey came to the audience and he said, brothers and sisters, I won't be able to address you tonight. And then she said hundreds of people pulled out guns.
Whoa.
And they said, speak, Garvey, speak. And the police backed up, and Garvey went back up to the podium, and he said, brothers and sisters, as I was saying. And he went into his speech during
There
that
you
particular
go.
time. That was a story she told all the time. And so just let me know that black people, you know, I guess I'm born in 54. I just turned last month 65.
Sure.
And so in our generation, we didn't hear about black people in the South fighting back or being resistant.
Standing up.
And that and from that point of view, so it let me know, wait a minute, there's another tradition that I didn't know anything about.
Didn't know we had a voice and had power.
Yeah, and we're willing to back it up.
Yeah.
You're preempting my question.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll get to it.
So Queen Mother Moore, I would say first and foremost, is one of my mentors, amongst many, including my parents.
Yes.
And Queen Mojo actually from New Iberia, Louisiana.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
I have a lot of I'm from
people-
Louisiana.
Yeah.
Oh, real parish.
I'm from Lafayette.
Okay, my
Acadiana.
people, my mother's people from the Claiborne Parish. Up
Okay.
north.
Oh, okay. All right.
Remember
Claiborne
Simba?
Parish.
Simba's from Monroe. His people are from Monroe.
Yes,
Louisiana.
it's my father's people from
Yes.
Monroe. Yeah.
Whereas my father's people, and it's talked about in a book, was from Bolivar County, Mississippi.
Okay.
And people don't even think about Marcus Garvey movement connected to these places,
Yep.
but they used to have Garvey rallies in where my father was born, like 1,500 people
Which y'all-
in a country we're talking about.
Okay.
which is
And in the
significant.
South.
Yeah, in the South, you know. So people don't think about that, and that's a part of our tradition. Even though, Geronimo Gijago, who another person who inspired me, he talked about growing up in where in Louisiana.
It was Morgan City.
Morgan City,
Morgan
City, and how they had Garvey movement down there, and some of those elders who inspired him.
And interesting enough, being in Louisiana and having history, we didn't have any black history and nothing speaking of anyone from there that has come up through the movement.
Right.
And that's scary.
And so we're talking about when we grew up, but I think when our parents, say like my mother grew up in Wewoka, Oklahoma, which is a town founded by black Seminoles, and she said that they were when it was segregated, they had Negro history, and she was well informed. But even that was sanitized because she said she didn't know anything. She was angry when she heard about the Tulsa white supremacist attack in 1921. That wasn't really introduced in their history. So it was a Negro history,
Yep.
and not a black history. You know,
Because it still was one that was what? Monitored.
right, exactly. They controlled the system.
And I was going to say that the title of your book, it automatically made me think of, Robert Williams, the Blackguard, but from a specific geographic perspective.
Right, from
Could you talk
Mississippi.
about the content of what you talk about in the book?
Well, first of all, you mentioned Robert Williams, and project I'm working on right now is Robert Williams wrote an autobiography called When God Lay Sleeping. It was a quote from one of his uncles. But he wrote that autobiography. It's unpublished, and I'm working with a team of people to prepare that for publication, along with some interviews and writings of his wife, Mabel Williams. And Robert Williams, for the audience that don't know, is a brother from North Carolina who in the 50s organized black people to respond to the Ku Klux Klan was forced into exile in Cuba. He lived in China. He traveled through East Africa, particularly Tanzania, and then he returned to the United States, where he fought charges, and charges were dropped against him. So this is a triumphant story we want to tell. We Will Shoot Back follows the tradition of black people in Mississippi who oppose Klan terror, white supremacy, and the book is focused from the 1950s through 1979. It ended with a group called the United League of Mississippi, headed by a brother by the name of Skip Robinson. One of the reasons I end the book there, or I take it up to the 70s, there's another book, I forgot the title of it, where they said that after 1967, black people didn't need to protect themselves anymore.
Oh, right.
So I wanted to carry it all the way to 79 to show that black people needed to protect themselves. The federal government still didn't have our backs, and sometimes was the enemy.
Right.
And so we had to. I just wanted to demonstrate that, and I wanted to demonstrate how black people had to rely upon their own resources to defeat, and our own determination to defeat white supremacy. Whereas we're not free in Mississippi, I think we still live under an empire, but black Mississippi has more black elected officials than any state in the union, whereas before we couldn't even vote. So they changed the nature of things, and there's not the same level of fear of our people, white people, and of white supremacy as it was during my father's time when my father grew up there in the 1920s. And armed resistance, I argue, played a major role in changing that dynamic in the state.
And also talk to you, since I want to segue to back to Mississippi with the Lumumba political tradition that you are a staunch supporter of. And talk about that a little bit.
I actually feel I'm a part of it, but Chokwe Lumumba was one of my comrades, one of my influences also. He was originally born in Detroit, but he moves to Jackson, Mississippi. He's a part of a group called the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. But then he and I and others in 1984, we founded a group called the New African People's Organization, and that NAPO. And so he returns to Mississippi after his initial piece there in the late 80s, I believe it was. And he becomes so, because he's fighting against Klan marches, he's defending, as an attorney, he's defending black people in the state of Mississippi. He's an advocate on such level that there's a demand for him to run for mayor. And as opposed to him running as an individual, we decide that he should, in his ward, first he runs not only for mayor, he runs for city council, in 2009. They formed in his community People's Assembly in his ward, and that's who developed his campaign agenda, his platform, and he's elected overwhelmingly to city council. I think actually it was on May 19th, Malcolm's birthday, he wins. In 2009, I think he has 63% of the vote. And so he runs there, but then he runs in 2013 for mayor, and he's able, with 58% of the vote, win, expanding the People's Assembly citywide.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Chokwe had an agenda of cooperative economics. He had an agenda of making sure that whereas one of the things he found out with city council is a lot of times the city's business would go to outlying predominantly white entrepreneurs who don't even live in the city. And so he even photos of the city council was taken by a white photographer who didn't even live in the city. And so he tried to switch that agenda around to have the finances benefit people who lived in the city. And but unfortunately, he died 8 months into his campaign, and then in 2017, his son runs again, and Chokwe Lumumba is now the mayor. Many of you might have seen him on the media recently opposing the ICE raids in Mississippi, and being very defiant and speaking out and speaking in people's interests. So that's what primarily what he's about. they've been doing some things there also to try to get a different relationship with the police, with the community.
Right.
But they've even struggled with the local officers and gotten them on board with some of their policies. Right. And he's in the process of trying to transform those relationships. But we're very proud of what he's been able to accomplish. Also, his sister Rukia Lumumba, she's established an institution her father wanted to build for a while, the People's Advocacy Institute. So they're working around similar issues around getting them around police misconduct, working around issues like immigrant community. Because keeping in mind, a lot of folks don't see how immigration relates to black folks. And of course, many of the immigrants are black.
Right.
Number one. Number two, part of the fear that Trump and them bring against immigration is the fear that the United States empire would no longer be majority white. Right. And so it's based upon white people wanting to continue to have dominance that they've had since the United States was formed, as a republic years ago. So we gotta recognize, when I say we, I'm talking about black people, have to realize what type of relationship do we want to have, what type of society we want to live in, and how we want to build. And so, and if we want real self-determination, where our interests lie. Right. So we can't be with the Trumpites and the neo-fascists who trying to maintain a white settler colony. So that's what the agenda that many of us seek forward. You all kind of, Malik, you come out of the legacy of Black Panther Party and said power to the people.
That's right.
And so how do we create a society and a system where people are truly empowered? And right now we're not. The interests of the government go to the corporations and to the 1%. And so we have to develop new strategies to undermine that. But first and foremost, people have to be aware that they can't go along and get along, that our children die. Recently, people are looking at things like this forest fire in the Amazon, how that's destroying the environment. But then there are other things that destroy the environment, and it's because of the policies of the 1%.
Right.
Not only in the United States, but globally. Actually, we're talking about something that affects people around the globe. And so it's important for us to be connected with folks, not only in the United States, but around the world, to change it where we truly have power to the people, and we have a society that benefits our children and creates a future. Because the way the environment is going, it's questionable will we even be here.
Yeah, and I think it was Bobby Seale who once said that power is the ability to define phenomena,
right,
then in turn make it act in a desired manner.
Exactly.
By any means necessary, right?
I don't know if it was Bobby or Huey, but that's
it was one of them.
Yeah, one of them.
Well, when we come back, we're going to ask some more questions to Professor Umoja, which I want to tell you his name is Akinyele, which means House of Valor, Omowale, the son who has returned, and Umoja just brings it all together in unity. So we'll be back soon.
I appreciate it. All right. That's what you mean.
Okay. So you got the
How old is this?
That's what it is. Genetic knowledge.
And then everybody mixing.
And I definitely want to make sure we get these in for some of the events.
Okay, because they're coming out with something called. It's a new that the guy from Richmond College.
Yep.
All right, and then contact.
Yep. Okay.
Doug Refresh.
Yes, we're ready.
I wanted to ask a question about the African Blood Brotherhood.
Oh, cool.
We can do that.
Yes.
Okay. And I definitely want to make sure about some events and how to contact, and then we're going to wrap it on up.
Cool.
Yes,
Yes.
we're ready.
We're back with the Vanguard on Power 108.9 with Professor Akinyele and Mojo. And Kwame had a final question for him?
Yes, it's kind of like a two-parter. Before you arrived, we were talking, every time we would mention something, Marcus Garvey would come up, right? And I found out that J. Edgar Hoover, his legacy was made on Marcus Garvey's back, basically.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's true.
but there were people that were fighting back in the 20s.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yes.
Marcus Garvey, J. Edgar Hoover. It wasn't even called the FBI yet. It was called the Bureau of Investigation. He got his start investigating Marcus Garvey. It was if those of you who used to watch the show Boardwalk Empire, they actually focused on that. How rather than go against organized crime during that time, and people like Al Capone, he chose to focus on Marcus Garvey. Not only Marcus Garvey, but
Dr. King's grandfather too was one of the original victims.
Oh yeah, but there was another group that you mentioned earlier, African Blood Brotherhood,
ABB,
founded by a brother from St. Kitts, Cyril Briggs. It was formed primarily in Harlem, but it was around the United States. We mentioned the Tulsa attack in 1921. The African Blood Brotherhood was one of the organizations that organized resistance to that. But it was a secret society. It was different from Garvey's group, even though they were involved in UNIA. And they mostly aligned themselves with the left because they were inspired by the Russian Revolution. And many of them saw themselves and became some of the first black members of the Communist Party.
Marxists.
But actually, that group, my last name, Umoja, actually, I joined a black secret society called the House of Umoja when I was 19. And they had met with people like Cyril Briggs and Harry Haywood, who were involved in African Blood Brotherhood to try to get some direction. And so I kind of feel connected to that part of our history.
Okay. And how can people contact you about events going on at Georgia State, and how to follow you on social media?
At Georgia State, we're on Facebook and Twitter. The Facebook account is Department of African American Studies at Georgia State University. Just like our page, and you will be able to get information about what's happening at Georgia State. We have it's 25 years of our department, and we will have a celebration in November. November, I believe, is the 14th?
Yeah, I think it is
14th to the 16th. Right. We have a conference, Activism and Scholarship in Black Studies. And also, just keep in mind, in Atlanta next March will be the conference of the National Council of Black Studies here in Atlanta. So a lot of scholars from around the country, and sometimes we have people internationally, will be here for that. So I can be contacted. I'm on Twitter, Baba AK, on Twitter, BABAAK. I'm on Instagram, AK Umoja, AKUMOJA. And you could also follow me by my name on Facebook, as well as through the book. We have a page for We Will Shoot Back. So all those ways. I can be emailed at AK, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm confusing them. NUAFRIKA, New Africa, NUAFRIKA @gmail.com. Awesome. So all those places I could be reached.
Well, we thank you for coming to the Vanguard, and I told everybody to get their popcorn. Oh yes.
Announce October 4th and 5th. I'm working with a crew of people. We're doing a conference, relearning H. Rap Brown, who's another person who inspired me. This is 50 years since his book Die Nigga Die. He was also one of the leading spokespersons of Black Power. So October 4th and 5th at Auburn Avenue Research Library.
Oh,
cool. All right, get your popcorn ready. So again, we want to thank you for coming here. And next show we have will be September 15th. So tune in, and thank you for riding with us. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Free
sir.
the land.
Free the land.
By any means.